Alright, what is going on everybody? It is your boy Bounty here, and I am bringing you another tier list video, but this time the list is going to be a little bit different. As you can see right here in the beautiful red color Nitara matchup chart. So usually everybody always makes tier lists and stuff of characters, like they'll just put like a top tier, mid tier, low tier, stuff like that. I feel that it'll be really good just to make a sort of like a matchup chart of just what Nitara looks like, because so many people have a lot of reasonings as to why they put characters in, like let's say high tier or like top tier or low tier, mid tier, stuff like that. But I feel like just really breaking down the character and sort of breaking down how the matchups work is actually much more beneficial in terms of actually getting good information on a character. So let me just get straight right into it. I just kind of wanted to just explain that really quick. So I'm just gonna go in order as you see them right here. Which characters she beats? Obviously 5-5, meaning that it's even. 4-6 she loses, and then the dreaded 3-7. I don't think she has a 7-3 winning matchup, if I'm being honest. She really doesn't have any like 3-7s either from what I see. Maybe as I go along I might see one, but I'm not too sure. All right, so Astra for sure is, she loses this one. It's not really hard that she loses it, but she definitely does. Her recovery on that move, I forgot, it's that fireball move, I forgot the exact name of it. It's that little sword slice thing she does. The recovery on that thing is actually ridiculous. You can do down back 2 and then do EX dive kick to try to call that out, and you can do it. But if you mess up that timing even a little bit, she's gonna recover in time, block it, and you do get punished. Or if you try to do your down back 2 and if you slightly mistime it, you're just gonna get hit by that projectile again, which sucks. Also, we all know what she's capable of doing. I honestly feel like this character, a lot of people kind of underrate her abilities, if I'm being honest. Like so many Astra players, I don't know, they just kind of play the same. It's weird to say. I know there's a lot of good Astra players out there, but I don't know, just a lot of them sort of stick to the same game plan. But I feel like it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just more so a testament as to how good the character is. But she doesn't really get destroyed by Astra, but for sure you have to look out for a lot of things, that's for sure. Moving on to Baraka, this is a 5-5, honestly. Ever since the changes to the nerfs and all that stuff of reducing the damage of just the Cyrax cameo of this being nerfed and all that stuff, still a very good cameo for Baraka, but just you can't necessarily just do a lot of crazy chip situations with Cyrax. You can do it with Striker and Kano, but it's not necessarily as strong. Just because even if Baraka does get the hit, you're not getting hit for 500 damage like how it used to be in season 1. So yeah, it's definitely more manageable. You can get across the zoning much easier with the blade sparks. It's much easier to see the projectile and actually react to it in time. Another thing that I'm trying to think about, there's so much stuff that you could just do with this character, honestly. He's not necessarily bad, but it's definitely more favorable in Nitara's favor. Ermac, I feel it's still very early to tell, but from what I've seen with the few Ermacs that I have fought up against, it is definitely a 5-5. Because we sort of have the same issue. Like, we do have really good pressure once we get going, but once we get the hit, kind of the damage falls off for Ermac. It's definitely much easier for Ermac to get the hit just because of all the tools that he has, with the run cancel pressures and all that stuff, and also with the float, which you can mix up, which is pretty cool. But like I said, there's not much experience I've had with Ermac just because the character is relatively recent. So, and I haven't really found a true Ermac player that has optimized everything so far. But so far, from what I have fought, I would say that is relatively even. Geras is a very weird one. I'm like in a toss-up between 6-4 and 5-5. Just because the character is good, Geras, once they get started, it is very scary. But also Nitara, like, it is so easy to bait out Geras's wake up. It is probably one of the easiest things you can do. And also, I'd argue that Nitara's close-up game, like her pressure, is a little bit scarier than Geras. Like, yeah, he does have the forward 3 overhead. They do have the back 4 sweep that you can do to keep yourself safe. But I feel that once you have Nitara with the Kung Lao low hat, or if you have the chameleon, like, it's just, her pressure just gets very scary, man, really. And also, only having very few tick throws. I think the only tick throw that Geras has is off of forward 1, forward 1, 2, and down 3 versus, I'm trying to think, yeah, I think those are the only tick throws he has. But it's very close. Honestly, I'm in a toss-up between winning and 5-5. I'll keep a 5-5 just to keep it safe. Havoc is another very interesting one, just because even though Havoc is considered a weak character, in my opinion, and by a lot of other characters' opinions as well, I would say this matchup is relatively even as well, just because the fireball pressure that Havoc has, simply because it covers so much of the screen with the fireball that he does, the one that travels horizontally across the screen, and also the crazy projectile. I forgot what it's called, but it's the one that does like zigzag motions. That one covers a lot of the air. So it really just puts Nitara in a situation where she has to play that ground game. And in a situation like with Havoc where they have the back 2 string, even though the mid is relatively slow, if you were to do a poke, for example, and then backdash into back 2, you can't do your forward 1 to contest it, or even doing your down 1, for example. So that is something you do have to watch out for. It's not like Nitara loses or destroys them completely, but it's just a matter of who can get in first, because Havoc can definitely lame you out and just feel very annoying. And if you get in, it feels very good. But if it's very hard to get in on the Havoc player, it definitely feels like this. But it's usually just more so a matter of who adapts better to their playstyle. So I would say this one is relatively even as well. Johnny Cage, this one definitely he wins, not by a large margin, just only a little bit, because he did receive nerfs. And those nerfs, even though they did affect his game plan, it didn't really change exactly what he does to Nitara in terms of just keeping her locked down. So there's really not much I can say about Johnny. He can just armor out of everything if you know about the gaps. If you watched my Twitch stream last night, I actually fought against a Johnny player who did know about all of my gaps in Nitara's string, so that was really hard to adapt to, but I did end up taking the win on them because they had a few key errors in that. But I definitely had to make more reads compared to what the Johnny player had to do, so they definitely have a slight advantage over this, nothing too crazy. And then we move on to the Blind Swordsman. This one is a very interesting one because she absolutely kills Kenshi. To be honest, no, I'm just kidding. I can't lie. This is such a shitty matchup, I swear. It feels like a fucking 9-1, if I'm being, it feels like down here, like a tier that doesn't even exist. But the only reason why I'd say it's maybe 4-6 and not 3-7 is simply because of the fact that the damage output that you can get is also similar to what Kenshi can get with the Sento. That's the only thing. If Kenshi fucks up and Nitara gets the hit, I'm hitting Kenshi just as hard as he's hitting me, which is very good. If you get hit with 400 with the Sento, Nitara can also hit him for 400 with her damage as well. So that's very good. So it's even in that aspect. But the fact that he gets Sento and all that stuff, her armor isn't necessarily the greatest, but if you have certain cameos, like if you have Scorpion, you can call out Scorpion so that Sento can, Scorpion's Fireball can hit the Sento, but you're obviously sacrificing your cameo to do that. But obviously there is a lot of little nuances to talk about this matchup, especially with the Sento, but for sure Kenshi wins this one. Kitana is another very interesting one that she wins. Her zoning is very strong, especially against Nitara. She does have her aerial mobility, but if you pair up Kitana with Janet, it's a perfect matchup for her, simply because she can set up the wall with Janet and it just covers a lot, because now you're forced to jump over the Janet. And Kitana can definitely call that out, especially losing her fans, the normal straight fan that she can do on the air, also her aerial fans as well that cover the air. It is very hard to go around that stuff. I mean, it's not necessarily impossible. If you get in, there's a lot of options for Kitana to get out, because her back 2-4 covers a lot of range, very good mid, and they can't stagger it too, which is very scary. It's not necessarily impossible. I need to brush up more on this matchup, because I did fight Retro. For those of you who don't know who Retro is, a very good Kitana player. If you don't follow them on Twitter, I recommend that you do. And that matchup made it look like it was impossible, but to be honest, I just feel like it was more so me not necessarily being aware of the matchup, but for sure it's definitely 4-6. It's not as bad as as other people make it seem, but for sure she definitely has the advantage in that one. Kung Lao, this is a very interesting one, because I don't think Kung Lao, oh my god, this is such a tricky one. In some instances, it's even, in some instances, it's also 4-6, simply because of the Goro of having safe armored launcher. That is very crazy. But Nitara sort of gets the same thing using Chameleon with the fan lift, so it's kind of back and forth in a way. And also Nitara hits more if you actually get the Kung Lao to open up. She actually does more damage than Kung Lao. But the one thing that Kung Lao does have is that his playstyle more so chips you away, like very slowly with life, versus Nitara just looks for big hits. So I'm in a very big toss-up between Kung Lao and Nitara, if I'm being honest with you guys. He does have slightly better buttons than Nitara, I would say. Like, he actually has a lot of ways to pressure as opposed to Nitara, so maybe I might give him the advantage in that instance. But for sure, if they were to just adjust Kung Lao in certain ways, it'll definitely be a 5-5, but he's not up by a lot. Like, if there was a way to put like 5.5 or something, I would definitely put Kung Lao in that, because it's very close to being even, if I'm being honest. And speaking of even, Lee Mei, I feel like is very honest. even though she does have the lantern to cover my aerial options, and she also has a pretty decent projectile, her back forward one, the only reason why I would say it's even is simply because we both suffer from the same syndrome of stubby limbs. So it is very, very tricky for us to actually do anything. I would say, however, with an optimal Li Mei player that actually knows about the gaps and stuff, this matchup can feel like this, but I actually believe it's here. Because if you do your EX down back 3 with Li Mei, it actually is a punish on a lot of Nitara strings. For example, forward 1-2 is -7, and if you do EX down back 3 with Li Mei, that is a guaranteed punish. So that is something you had to watch out for, and you can mix it up. However, because EX down back 3 is not an armored move, her armored move is EX back forward 4. You can actually mix it up with certain cameos. For example, like Kung Lao, you can do Kung Lao low hat. So you can do forward 1 into low hat to try to get them catching a button. And you're most likely gonna make them waste the bar of meter doing that as well. So there's a lot of little nuances in the Li Mei Nitara matchup. Like I said, she does have the lantern to sort of cover your air options. They suffer from stubby limbs. Nitara's down 4 is pretty good, similarly to Li Mei's down 4 actually, which is really interesting. So it can definitely be a toss-up, but I feel this is more so of a knowledge check. If the Li Mei player is aware of the Nitara player's stuff, but they don't know of the Li Mei's moves, then it's definitely over here 100%. But I feel like it's even. Liu Kang. This for sure, for me personally, I feel like it's a 3-7, but it's definitely on the 4-6 side. I just need to know the Liu Kang matchup better. Similarly to Li Mei, the difference in between these two is they also have a 6-frame punishing move. But the difference with Li Mei and Liu Kang is Liu Kang can do it without bar. So his standing 1 is 6 frames. He does have a 6-frame jab. I think he's the only character in the entire game who has, actually no, Kung Lao actually has a 6-frame move as well, back 1, I forgot to mention that. Liu Kang's standing 1 also is a 6-frame move, so if I do Nitara's forward 1-2 on block and the Liu Kang player blocks it, then I am going to get punished every single time for it. So, and not only in addition to that, another scary thing about this too is Liu Kang's zoning is very, very good, very potent, especially with certain cameos that you can use. For example, like Chameleon, you can do a lot of crazy stuff with Liu Kang. So yeah, this definitely is a 4-6. It feels like a 3-7, like I said personally, just because whenever I fight Liu Kang players, it's always very, very weird ones. Like they're not really playing in optimal ways. I just catch them in really like awkward situations. But for sure, if I find a dedicated Liu Kang main who also knows about the Nitara matchup, for sure it's going to be a crazy one. I know that for sure, 100%. And now we go on to Melina. Melina is another interesting one. In some instances, it feels like this, and other times it feels here. In some cases, to be honest, it even feels like I beat the character. But I feel like having her 5-5 is good, simply because she doesn't really rely too much on mix-ups. It's more so just pressure off the 1-2 string. What's the other? Forward 1. That's another one. Very good button for her. It's her mid. There's a lot of things you have to watch out for. Similarly to Li Mei, I wouldn't necessarily say that she has stummy normals, but it's more so the fact if you do, for example, if you do 1-2 with Melina and they whiff punish it, you're just stuck in that animation. So a lot of her buttons, it really feels very committal if you go for it, which makes sense just because Melina as a character, she's played very aggressively. So I feel that as a Nitara player, if you're just aware of that spacing and also being careful of the random ball rolls that they do, I feel like this matchup is actually even. There is a lot of stuff that Melina can do. For example, off of a knockdown, you can call a Kung Lao low hat if they have the Kung Lao cameo, and they can set up a lot of hard to block boost situations. However, Nitara can do the same thing. So I don't really see how that can be used as an argument. Also, Melina's zoning compared to Li Mei, her size do not go full screen unless you're spending a bar, so that actually hurts the character a lot. So yeah, that's pretty much my reasoning as to why I put her to 5-5. 4-6. Let's see, I'm trying to think of who I can put to 4-6. Omni-Man, maybe 4-6? I'm not too sure, because Omni-Man is very, very scary. His 2-2 string and also the 1-2 is very scary on block for Nitara, because both of these characters are very aggressive. They want to be in your face, and I'd argue that Omni-Man does it better than Nitara, and the fact that he also hits just as hard as her, and he does it meterlessly as well. And not only that, his EX clap, I think it's EX back forward 1, covers a good amount of the screen, especially in the range that Omni-Man wants to play specifically, and it can catch her trying to jump or maybe do a lot of different moves. So yeah, I would definitely give Omni-Man the edge in this. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a 3-7 simply because of the fact that even though his close range pressure is very good, you're still dealing with Nitara. And if you mess up with this character, you're eating 400 damage minimum. So that is definitely something that the Omni-Man player has to watch out for. But I would say that he does have an easier time mixing you up compared to Nitara, who doesn't really have much in that aspect. This might be the first 3-7 I'm going to put in the video. Now, Peacemaker did receive nerfs. I am aware of that. I have yet to fight a Peacemaker since the nerfs, because for some reason, like, character usage of this character just completely died after the nerfs. But I really feel that Peacemaker is such a crazy character for Nitara. His anti-air, down back 1, I believe, the little, I'm not gonna say little spitball, but that's just what I call it for fun. He has that move, the gun that can go from full screen and combos. They fixed the Eagly glitch. But for sure, if this was pre-patch Eagly glitch, this would be like an 8-2. It was so bad. And the fact that this character can just really confirm off of any hit is actually ridiculous. The mix-up off of 2-2-4 or the 2-2 command grab, or just doing 2-2 low Eagly, it is such a big threat, especially if they have the right cameos paired up with it. For example, like Kano, Chameleon, Striker, they have a lot of these different cameos that Peacemaker can use. So yeah, I definitely feel that this is one of those matchups that is very, very hard for Nitara to do anything. And not only just that too, his strings, the forward 4 string, covers a lot of screen space. And like I said before, Nitara struggles a lot with having stubby limbs. So that is something that she does have to be careful of. And like, unfortunately, not only is playing that annoying sort of zoning game very good for Peacemaker, but his up close game is also, I'm not going to say just as good, but it's definitely up there. This is probably going to be the first 3-7 of the video. We got to have a very terrible matchup, and we got to have a good one. Quan Chi. Quan Chi zoning, since the patch, has been very, very good. I'm not gonna lie. When I go up against a Quan Chi player that actually knows what they're doing, I struggle a lot, simply because I'm not too familiar with the Quan Chi matchup like I am with some of these other characters here. Just because finding Quan Chi players on ranked on Kombat League, especially on PC, is a little bit hard for me. But since the crossplay patch came out, I have ran into a few Quan Chis here and there, and I would say that even though the zoning has improved using the zone of power with the armor setup and all that stuff, it's very good, but just Nitara eats that up. Her 1-2-1-2 string just eats up that armor completely. Also, the fact that even if they do block it, you can actually do your down back 2 to keep yourself safe, and if you want to use a bar of meter just to continue your pressure, you can. And also another good thing with Nitara, ever since they added Chameleon and Janet to the game, you can actually get a lot of meterless confirms with it as well, which is very, very good for her. And in terms of Quan Chi, having that 9-frame down 1, and Nitara's moves aren't really that minus unless you really commit to the like very crazy stuff. So yeah, I would say that this is one of the few matchups in the game where Nitara actually wins. Not necessarily by a large margin. For sure, the Quan Chi player can do a lot of interesting things, but I'd say in the long run, in a 1st to 10 situation, Nitara is definitely going to have more games compared to the Quan Chi player. Raiden is another one similarly to Baraka, to where ever since the patch happened of nerfing the character, it's just been very good in terms of managing it. Obviously, he's still good. He can still do a lot of the crazy shenanigans that Raiden is known for 100%, but it's definitely more manageable, and also it's not as punishing, because in season 1, for those of you that remember, this character used to hit for 500 damage, and then they'd call the Cyrax cameo using Storm Cell on block and just regain all of their meter and also get the chip damage on you, so it was very crazy. Versus now, you still can't do it with Kano or the Striker, or the Striker, for example, is another one. So you still can't do a lot of crazy stuff with Raiden, but for sure, like I said, it's much more fair, much more manageable to fight against. The character is still very, very good, but honestly, I would say it's pretty even to fight this character. I'd honestly argue that it's very fun to fight Raiden players, simply because it's more so of who knows the other character more than the other person, and I kind of like this fighting this matchup now. That's just my opinion though. Rain is another interesting one. I don't really have much Rain experience, but I would say that as of right now, it's definitely 5-5. Rain is a very interesting one because ever since the patch, I've seen a lot of crazy stuff. I have fought against a few Rain players, not too much, but I have ran into a few of them, and they're definitely making use of that new back 3 button that they have. It's definitely very good for Rain's toolkit, but I feel that Nitara definitely still shines, because even though Rain is a zoner compared to Quan Chi, for example, Quan Chi is a full screen zoner. Rain is more so a zoner who who wants to keep you in the mid screen. And also that is a range where Nitara is very good, simply because if you can react to something in time, you can do your EX back forward 2 and get a punish afterwards, or you can even do your dive kick and just whiff it just to get space in between versus the rain. But you do have to be careful just because they have that I think it's down down up, where they could do the little water ball at you. And also going for those hard to blockable setups with the whirlpool and all that stuff, that is still a very big threat with rain. But like I said, compared to Quan Chi versus Rain, Rain is a mid-screen zoner versus Quan Chi is a full-screen zoner. So you still have to play within a range and where Nitara can do something. It's not as much compared to where your close quarters combat like with Omni-Man, but she can definitely do something using her back forward too. And with certain cameos like Kung Lao Low Hat, you can actually control a little bit of the neutral as well with Rain, just to make it a little bit fair. So it's not too bad. Reiko. Me personally, my Reiko experience is very, very ass. Every time I go up against this character, it just feels like no matter what I do, I lose. I don't necessarily know if that's just me not knowing the matchup or if the character is just that hard to fight against, because the ninja stars that Reiko has cover so much of the screen. Even if I try to jump over, sometimes I do catch myself getting hit by the stars anyways, even if I do an early jump. And it's even worse when he does the EX ninja stars. At that point, I just have to flawless block the stars and just hope I don't mess up the timing and get chipped out. Because even if Nitara tries to jump over it, unless you really call it out early and you use your aerial dash to go upwards, like further into the screen, you're gonna get hit by those stars, which sucks. And also his buttons, the range that he has on his kicks, I think it's 3-4, the string that he has, it's actually ridiculous. His down 4 is insane, the overhead that he has is very crazy. He's not necessarily a 50-50 character, but the amount of range that he has on his pokes outranges Nitara's by a lot, so he really controls that space as well. Like I said, I don't necessarily know if it's just me being not having as much knowledge in that I do in the Reiko matchup, but for sure it's definitely a losing matchup. Whether it's a 4-6 or a 3-7, I'm not too sure, but for me personally, I'm just gonna leave it to a 3-7 just because that's what it feels like to me. Going on to Reptile, Reptile for sure is a very interesting one. I have fought a few Reptiles after the patch, right? But I wouldn't necessarily say that that changed of what happens in the Nitara matchup. Simply because you can still see the force ball, you can just jump over it, react with your dive kick, get the punish afterwards. Also, Reptile sort of suffers the same fate with Nitara, of that you just really have to rely. How do I say this? It's like a knowledge check matchup pretty much. If you don't know about the gaps and all that stuff in Reptile strings, or not knowing that you can flawless block the second hit of Reptile's EX back forward 2, little things like that really changes the matchup a lot, because now all of a sudden you can't do EX back forward 2 with Reptile to keep yourself safe, because Nitara is going to punish you for 400 damage afterwards. And similarly with Reptile, if you're not ready for the force balls as Nitara, you're just going to be eating the force balls to death. But I really feel that if these two characters know which each of their like possibilities are and what options they do have, Nitara definitely has an upper edge, not by a lot. For sure, after the patch, Reptile has a little bit more better pressure simply because of the invisibility thing, but I wouldn't say it's too much of a difference because the core general game plan didn't really affect them too much. Scorpion, another one being 5-5. Scorpion is just the character in which he's just very, very simple. Me personally, I don't fight many Scorpions, so I actually need to learn this matchup better, because sometimes the matches do end up very, very close for like no apparent reason, simply because I miss a lot of my punishes. But really, there's really not much that Scorpion has that can really affect Nitara, simply because he's a very well-rounded character. He just stays on the ground, has very little strings. There's really not much to him. The way he just kills you really is just by chipping you out to death with making you eat block damage by using the down back 2, keeping it safe with Striker or Kano, whatever cameo that the Scorpion player is running, or they just catch you with a lot of throws. That's really Scorpion's game plan. So yeah, there's really not much I can say. Similarly with Shang Tsung, I feel like this is a very interesting one, because you can punish. If they try to throw skulls at you, you can jump over it with Nitara and punish it. However, it is interesting because if he goes into the old form using the ground skulls, it does make this matchup a little bit tricky. I don't necessarily have too much Shang experience. It can go either or. I have fought against a few Shang players where I just feel helpless, but then once I get more so of their timing down for the fireballs and I get used to their fireball timings, I can just quickly switch the match very quick. So yeah, like I said, there's really not much I can say about Shang simply because I don't run into the character too much. But yeah, I would pretty much put this in 5-5. You can't really argue of just her losing this. I can maybe see Nitara winning this, but as of right now, I'm kind of comfortable in putting him in a 5-5. General Shao, definitely 4-6. Nitara loses this one for sure. Simply because no matter what you do in this situation, you're always going to have roughly 200 damage life difference, because this character just has so much health. 900 health for Nitara versus 1100 health with General Shao. That is actually ridiculous. So no matter what, you're always going to be starting the match off with a life deficit, which is not good, especially if they run a certain Shao, like Shao Jax, or if they even use a crazy one like Shao Tremor. He even has even more life, so now the deficit increases even higher, versus most cameos for Nitara don't really give her any life, they just keep her at the same, so it's very, very hard in that aspect. And also General Shao's standing 2 just covers so much of Nitara's abilities. You actually like can't jump in on this character at all. And also it's very hard to anti your General Shao with the jump in 2. It just covers so much of the space that you really have to make a lot of interesting reads. Obviously he does have gaps that Nitara can capitalize using her EX back forward 1, but if the General Shao blocks it and they read that you're going to try to do a punish on their gap, he can also hit you just as hard as Nitara hits you, so it's very, very scary. So for sure he definitely has the edge in this one. Sindel is another one to where she has the edge. That forward 1 string is actually the most annoying thing I've ever had to fight against, like I'm not even kidding. And the fact that her damage that she gets, she can just really confirm off of everything simply because of her back forward 2, the scream that she has. You can just confirm any hit, whether it be an anti-air or an air-to-air, or if you just catch a stray forward 1, for example, of them trying to move forward, you can just confirm into the back forward 2, go into your very simple B&B, go into a hard blockable with Kung Lao, or you can do some crazy stuff with Chameleon, or if you have the Janet setups, you can do that. Or much recently, which people are figuring out with the Cyrax setups, you can steal meter and set up a situation in which they have to eat a bomb afterwards. So that is very, very scary. So this character for sure is definitely up there. Not only that, but they also have a float, which is very scary because now they can also meet Nitara in the air, which is very bad for her. Even though Nitara does have very good air options, Sindel definitely beats her in that aspect, simply because she has a grounded fireball and she can do air ones, and most Sindel players would just do instant air fireball, which covers both the ground of you trying to dash forward in and also you trying to jump over. So it is very, very scary. So unless you get a very good read of the fireball timings of the Sindel player, it's going to be a very hard matchup for Nitara. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a 3-7, simply because you can throw a Sub-Zero cameo and just get rid of all the fireball stuff. However, like I mentioned earlier, with the forward 1 string being able to confirm off of anything into back forward 2, it's still definitely something that the Nitara player has to watch out for. So I definitely give the edge to Sindel in this one. Smoke is also another 5-5. It sort of has the same syndrome with Omni-Man, in which you have to be, you know, just fighting in front of each other's faces to do anything. But the only reason why to put Omni-Man here and not maybe Smoke, for example, is simply because Smoke, you live and die by the 50-50s. And with a character like Nitara, if you just up block something, like for example, if you do 4-3-2 with Smoke, and if she knows that and up blocks the overhead, you're going to be eating so much damage that it's actually ridiculous. And similarly to Smoke with Nitara, they're both very meter hungry characters to get a lot of their damage. So if you manage to drain the Smoke player's meter, if you hit them out of their invisibility, and if you get them to waste it, in the long run, Nitara is definitely going to be having a good time. But similarly to Smoke, if you can make the Nitara player waste their meter by doing a lot of crazy mistakes, for example, then you can actually, as a Smoke player, make a lot of good crazy comebacks. So this one is definitely even. This one is a very interesting one, Sub-Zero. In some cases, this feels 5-5, and with other players I've ran up against, it feels like a 4-6, simply because dealing with that clone is so annoying. And the way Sub-Zero as a character is played in MK1 is very defensive, very, very defensive. Once you get a life lead with Sub-Zero, the way you want to play this character, with Nitara especially, is just sit back, throw your clone, wait for them to maybe do a mistake, and either they get frozen by the clone or you anti-air them with something. Or as a Sub-Zero, if you want to get in and be aggressive, you do a very low aerial dive kick to be safe, or you can just mix up a lot of your strings. Now obviously there is gaps in his strings. I do know about that there is a lot of gaps and all that crazy stuff that Sub-Zero has. But the thing is, if you as a Sub-Zero player are aware of that, and if you do stagger your strings, And if the Nitara tries to punish with EX back forward 1, do all that stuff, Sub-Zero is going to be doing a lot of damage to you. Now, I'm not saying damage in terms of like hitting 50% B&Bs and all that stuff. I'm saying damage in terms of he's going to be hitting for maybe 300 damage, throw you into the corner, and now put you in a situation in which as a Nitara you have to defend. Because now there's a clone in front of your face, and Sub-Zero is in the perfect range to do his back forward 2, the little clone punch thing. I forgot the exact name of it. It's that little clone charge move that he has. Or as a P&D Ketchup likes to say, doing the size 16 shoe if you try to play like a ground and neutral game with Sub-Zero. But for sure, because of the gaps and all that stuff, most Sub-Zeros, unfortunately, like on Kombat League, they do kind of play autopilot. So I would put it here for right now, 5-5, but I can definitely see how this goes in Sub-Zero's favor if they play it perfectly. But for right now, I'll just put it safety and put it at 5-5. Now, the final character we have here is Tanya. Now, similarly to Reiko, I don't necessarily know if it's me being bad in the Tanya matchup, but this definitely feels like a 3-7 to me. She outranges Nitara in absolutely everything. And also the fact that she can also cover the air options with the staff that she has, and can cover herself with the Goro, or using like, I've seen really crazy cameos with Tanya, but really Goro and the most popular recent one with Chameleon, this character hits like a truck afterwards. I swear it does. The fact that you can cover so much and you can also zone with it too, and that you cover the most important options for Nitara, which is the air, even if you don't have the right cameo for Chameleon, for example, like if you have the Melina size, the fact that you can use your staff to cover this and then use the Goro to get a combo afterwards and maybe get around like 300 damage off of one singular hit is actually ridiculous to me. And similarly to Kung Lao over here, you do have the safe armor if you do have the Goro. So I don't know. Like, I don't know if I just have to brush up on my Tanya matchup more. I might have to look into like different cameos to maybe circumvent certain things. But for right now, I'd say this is a 3-7. So for everybody that skipped to the video that just wants to see the end of the list, this is the list right here. Let me know what you all think in the comments below of my list. Maybe you agree with me or maybe you don't. And if you don't, please let me know in the comments of what you think. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. Please leave a like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And I will see you all in the next one. Take care.